Hi everyone, welcome. We're just waiting for a few more people to come into the room and then we'll begin. But nice to see you all here. Hello. Oh, hi Amanda. Cool. For anyone just joining us now, we're waiting for a couple more minutes just to let some other people into the room. Great, I think we'll make a start now. Hi everyone, thank you for joining us. My name is Louisa Uliette and I'm curator of talks and events at the Photographers Gallery. We're delighted to be here with artist Evgenia Arbugaeva. Evgenia is joined by my colleague, senior curator at TPG, Anna Dannemann. Anna, together with Kara McQuaid, curated Hyperborea, Stories from the Russian Arctic, which is currently on display at the Photographers Gallery until February. The exhibition is a culmination of a project that first began in 2013 that focuses on the remote land and people of the Russian Arctic. Anna will say a little bit more about the exhibition in a minute. Just to give you a sense of the format for this evening, Evgenia will talk through her practice, looking at specific works in the exhibition and how that fits into wider notions of home, environmental change, and storytelling. After Evgenia's presentation and her discussion with Anna, we will move to comments from you. You can submit your questions through the chat function here, or they can be posed directly by electronically raising your hand using that blue hand function here, and then we will ask you to unmute yourself. The event should last roughly 1 hour in total. Please note we are recording this. We are approaching tonight in the same way we do all of our public programs, which is with the aim of creating a form of trust and mutual respect. So please keep that in mind. Before we start, I would like to thank this evening's speakers, Evgenia, Anna, and our colleague, Kara McQuaid, who I mentioned curated the show with Anna, which is still on the gallery. We hope you'll be able to join us again at some of our other forthcoming online activities. We'll be announcing more programs in relation to this exhibition in the coming weeks, so please keep checking back on our website. And hopefully we'll see you also in person at the gallery, which is open now. So thank you again for joining us, and now to Anna Dannemann.
Thank you so much, Louisa, for this warm welcome. And hello from myself as well. And thank you so much for joining us this evening, at least it's evening here in London, from all over the world, as I can see already in the chat. So that's fantastic. It's my great pleasure to be in conversation with Evgenia this evening, a photographer who has created a fantastically surreal and enchanting body of work on the Russian Arctic that is on show at the moment at the gallery. Evgenia herself was born in Dikson, a small port town on the shore of the Laptev Sea in the Republic of Yakutia in northern Russia. So she is very familiar and has a very personal connection to this land and the people she depicts in her work. She later moved away with her family and is currently living in London. Evgenia graduated from the photography program at New York's ICP in 2009. She is a recipient of several awards and is a National Geographic Society Storytelling Fellow. And in her photographic work, Evgenia combines documentary and narrative styles, often focusing on a few main protagonists she meets on her extensive travels. She has produced several bodies of work, and in our talk, as Louisa already mentioned, we're going to focus on the work in the exhibition Hyperborea, focusing on the Russian side, the Russian Arctic. So I'm really pleased to introduce Evgenia, who's going to give us a presentation of that work that will last roughly 20 minutes. So over to you, Evgenia.
Thank you so much, Louisa and Anna. It's a pleasure to be here and also see some familiar faces joining in from all over the world. Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for introduction. And this work is, a large part of this work is quite new. And so it was quite exciting to see it in print and on the walls of the gallery. And Anna and the whole photographers team, thank you so much for doing such an amazing work. with installation. I couldn't imagine it to be better. Thank you. So I will start with a map, just to show you where I'm taking you today. This is the map of Russia, the Russian coast, Russian Arctic coast, and all these places are where I was taking pictures. And Dikson is the place that Anna mentioned. Sorry, I'm just gonna move this here. Dikson is the town where I was born. And when you grow up in such a remote place, you kind of know that to see the world and to discover the world, you have to travel quite far. But I was always interested in places in the Russian Arctic. I wanted to see how people live in those places on more to the west or to the east from Dikson. So in 2013, I went on board of icebreaker ship called Mikhail Somov, and this ship delivers supplies to hard-to-reach meteorological stations. And we visited about 22 stations, and it was an amazing experience for me. And in a way, this trip shaped my work for the years to come. And this is the view from my room on the ship. And one station was particularly impressed me. This was the Khadavariha station, and this chapter of the work is already 7 years old. And when we first arrived to this place, and captain told me that you probably don't want to land here because this place is kind of unkept and messy, and the chief of the station is a little bit strange. But I thought, this sounds perfect. I really need to see this place. And when I came into the station and saw Slava, the chief of the station, I immediately thought that he is the person in a way that I was looking for, because he belongs to this generation of Arctic scientists and explorers that went to the Arctic kind of in a similar time when people went into space. And the working in the Arctic was considered as adventurous and as romantic as going into space. And this is the Slava's desk, and you can see there is a little cutout of Yuri Gagarin in his military uniform. And of course, this, the tools and the things that Slava used are quite old, and now all the stations that you will see in the Russian coast are quite advanced, and people use automatic software and different gear. And so I knew that when I was there, that this was a very short time when this kind of place and this kind of person can exist, or this kind of work can be performed in this way. So I was in a rush to document it. One of the things that I found most interesting about Slava is how he seems to belong so perfectly to this place, how he found this perfect place for himself, how he kind of merges with the environment, with the nature. And for me, it was interesting to see, because I think I still am looking for this perfect place for myself to live in. And I feel that Slava found this perfect place for him. And he's enjoying his solitude. And Arctic, this place is perfect for people like him. Actually, he was born on the ship and spent all his life on the water at sea. His parents were working on the ship, and when his mom, she was pregnant, and when it was time to give birth, they just stopped in one of the towns. She gave birth to him, and then they went back to the ship. So he cannot imagine his life without the sea. And he says that this place is perfect for him also because it's located on a very narrow peninsula, And from three sides, it's surrounded by the sea, and he feels like he's living on the ship. And when I did this story, I thought about all other things, or how other people view Arctic, or what it means for other people. Like for me, it was a place of my whimsical memories from the childhood. For Slava, it was a place of where he found himself and where he can kind of be on his own, far away from the world. But I wanted to see also places that can add to the character of Arctic, different colors and atmospheres and mood. And so in 2018, I became National Geographic Fellow, and I dedicated a year to kind of collecting more stories about Arctic and Arctic colors and atmospheres. And in January, I went to Canadinos Peninsula. It's a lighthouse and meteorological station. And when I first, I went there in 2013 on the ship, but at that time there were a few people living there. But in 2019, there were only 2 people operating lighthouse in the station, which I found incredible, considering that this place is so isolated. And when I learned that it's a young couple, I thought that this is really an interesting story that I need to see. And I decided to go in January when it's a time of the strongest blizzards, when you can experience this whiteout, when everything seems to be floating in the air and everything seems to be transparent somehow, or it looks like some mirages like Fata Morgana. And when I met Evgenia, we share the same name, and Ivan, for the first few days, they were just chatting away because I was the first person they saw in a long time, because they never really get visitors, because there's no roads to get there, and only a ship arrives there just once a year to deliver supplies. And they were telling me a lot about themselves. And they also told me that they're not married, but they really want to get married, but their wedding kept being delayed because of different family things. And one day when they were collecting water, they do it every day to measure salinity of seawater. And there was this beautiful light, and they were there together with their dog. And I asked them to just stand there, and I took this picture thinking that this is their wedding picture somehow, because the light is beautiful. It's all white. It seems everything so like lacy, like almost is covered with beautiful laces. And it's only them. I brought some treats with me. Apples, oranges, face cream, all the things that you cannot get and the ship doesn't deliver, because all the food supplies arrive in cans or dry food. So Zhenya and Ivan were really happy to see fresh fruit. And to keep them from freezing, Evgenia just kind of wrapped every apple in the newspaper. And she taught me this trick that actually if you put layers of newspaper into your insoles, it actually feels warmer. And I tried that, and it did the trick, I have to say. This is the cemetery right near the station. And they see it every day. I saw it every day. It was impossible not to ignore it. And in a way, it was a daily reminder of how, if anything happens and if these people will need medical help, they can only rely on the helicopter that can be delayed by bad weather, by weeks, days, sometimes months. And but this one is quite old. This is a cemetery of a family of lighthouse keepers from the 30s. They died of typhoid. and some sailors that died in a shipwreck. It's a shack on the shore of the sea, and Ivan wrote Kraj Zemli, which translates as edge of the world. I found Evgenia probably the most fascinating person that I found during my travels, because I think I just found her so brave and so strong. And I think, you know, usually when we look at the Arctic exploration or Arctic stories, there's all this brave men, brave explorers, and not many things are said about women. And in her case, you know, she's just there. She fell in love with the place, but she has a very strong core and spine. When she was 19, she went to work on her first station alone, and she worked on a few stations before she came here. And when she met Ivan a few years ago, she asked him if he wants to join her at the station. He agreed, and so they've been living here for 5 years. And every day they go on the shore to collect seawater for their research, and, you know, to look at the sky and the ice to report all of this data. And every day is really different, and the sea is different every day, the ice, the light. And Evgenia was telling me that, you know, every day when she goes on the shore, she's reminded of how everything is worth it, because they're just living in such beauty. And then the next journey took me to Chukotka. It's the eastern region in the Russian Arctic. It borders with Alaska by Bering Strait. And I first came there on assignment that really didn't work out, but I instantly felt a strong pull that this place has on me. It's a very interesting but very difficult place on many levels. It's very layered. There's all this history, and I just felt that I need to keep returning to understand it more. And so it's been 3 years now that I've been returning to Chukotka regularly, and in particular to this village called Enurmina. It is located on the shore of Chukchi Sea. It's quite a small community. It's only 300 people, and it's one of the most remote villages in the region. And partly because of their isolation, people there still kept their traditions and live off the land and the sea. And on this picture is Elder Nikolai. He lives a few kilometers from the village, because he says that it's too noisy in the village of 300 people. And he lives in this abandoned meteorological station. And here he's really sad, because I kind of caught him in this moment when he was talking about his wife, and she passed away a year ago. And so he was kind of remembering her, and then paused for a few minutes, lost in his own thoughts. One thing I noticed about children in the Enurmina, because they spend so much time outside, and so they're so connected to nature, that they observe the movements of animals really well, and they can mimic the movements of animals, like bird flight, etc. And then they incorporate it in their dancing. So here, Vika rehearses traditional dance in the cultural center in the village. This is from the night hunt. People in Enurmina and many people in Chukotka rely on the hunt for their sustenance. So they hunt whale, they hunt walruses, seals, and other sea mammals. And their ancestors have been doing this for years. they follow international quota. And what I found fascinating is that the way the hunt happens and the ritual of the hunt, after they kill an animal, they kind of all go quiet and they talk to an animal quietly inside themselves, asking for forgiveness for taking its life. But also they're talking to the sea and asking for forgiveness for taking its child. And there's so many stories and this notion of humans and animals coming from the same roots. There's one legend that Chukchi writer wrote about a woman and a whale that fell in love, and then the woman gave birth to the whales, and how, you know, whales and humans are now forever connected. And when the whale is hunted, it's the whale that chooses to give its life to humans. Usually Chukchi hunters don't take women on the hunt. Actually, it's forbidden. So I felt really lucky that they let me come with them, actually really often, almost on every hunt in summer. And I had a chance to see how the men transform, how, you know, some men in the village can be quite quiet and shy, but when they're on the boat at sea, when they're hunting, they become these brave hunters, attentive to every detail. And it's a fair hunt. They hunt walruses only when they're in the water. They never hunt them when they're hole out on the beach. And this summer, actually, I was in Chukotka just a month ago, and when we arrived, there was a lot of bears, and one hunter was injured really badly by a brown bear. And it was interesting how everybody reacted in the village, and some people thought that it's a bear came to take revenge on him because he was over hunting or he wasn't hunting the proper way. So there is this community, they control the way they hunt, or they kind of have their own inner compass on how to hunt, where to hunt, when it's ethical to hunt. This moment was very emotional for me, because as I travel in the Arctic region, of course, I see all these changes that happen in nature because of the warming climate, but I never really felt such a visceral panic as I felt here. And this is the little hut that is located in the middle of the beach, not far from Nurmina village, just 15 kilometers. And on this beach, Pacific walruses haul out every summer. And that summer, it was about 100,000 animals. And usually walruses rest on the floating ice during their migration and feeding, but because there's not enough ice, they all come out on this beach, and it's very crowded and dense, and there's not enough space for everyone. So they lay in 2, sometimes 3 layers, and often suffocating cubs and weaker animals. So I was there, you know, we were surrounded and I wasn't able to come out. And so I was just looking through this door and these animals, and I really felt helpless in this situation. And the final chapter of this series is about Dikson. I first arrived to Dickinson Island also in 2013 on that ship. And I remember really well when I was walking on empty streets, I was so emotional, and it I felt really depressed because it reminded me so much of my hometown Tiksi, because that's how they built those Arctic towns in Soviet time. They all look alike. And I knew that I have to come back and kind of capture it. And I thought that winter will probably be a better time, and the darkness of polar night. But then I didn't realize that it's actually really hard to photograph in complete darkness. So for 2 weeks, I was just waiting for something to happen, for aurora to appear. And I was really lucky. I didn't expect that, the Dickinson will give me such a gift of this beautiful light. It lasted a few hours, and in these few hours, I was running around like mad on the empty streets, trying to capture different moments. This is the monument to soldiers who defended Dikson against German submarines during World War II. And he kind of looks like this monster of Frankenstein in the snow. This was probably the scariest moment of my life. In this dark room, it's a long exposure, so in reality it's very, very dark, and I'm alone in this big building. It's like 5 floors, and I'm on the 2nd or 3rd floor, and I'm waiting for the perfect moment. I'm doing my long exposures, and then I start hearing this creaking sounds and the wind and slamming of the doors, and I started thinking about how people at the station told me about the polar bears and ghosts and whatnot. So it was quite scary. And when I finished the picture, I really quickly ran, probably faster than I ever ran in my life. And I will end with this picture. This is the moment when aurora started to fade and the town started to disappear back into the darkness. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Evgenia, and for this wonderful and beautiful presentation of this body of work that I think is so mesmerizing and is so interesting in the way that each of these chapters is so composed completely different, and you kind of dip into really different chapters, but they all come together as one photographic project. In our conversation, I thought it would be really interesting to start almost at the beginning. When was the point where you thought, not only do I want to visit this part of this land and this people, this specific landscape of the Russian Arctic again, but I want to make a photographic project about it, which is of course a really complex endeavor in itself, being able to visit there, making all of this happen. When did you, and what were the milestones on the way to be able to kind of come back and create this very layered body of work?
Well, I think I always knew, when you grew up in the Arctic region, you kind of know what else is there. I knew about Dickinson, I knew about Chukotka, of course, and these are the places that I always wanted to visit, to photograph, but also to experience. And since 2013, I was also working as a documentary photographer, doing different assignments for magazines, and many of them were connected to Arctic. And as I traveled, I kind of started to pick up different things that I thought was important to capture, like the seasonality of light. It started to kind of shape in that way. I thought about the color and how I really wanted that bright whiteness. I really wanted this neon light and different moods also, because there's so many, we as humans, we have so many different moods, and the same way the Arctic as well. It can be, really joyful and beautiful. It can be very harsh and unforgiving, and all these things that I thought, of course, in 4 stories, it's impossible to capture that, but I thought I will try do that. And it took time. It takes time always. And I'm a very impatient person, and actually, and working in the Arctic tests my patience all the time because I have to wait and wait for the weather to get better, for the flights that are always delayed, or also to create work in such remote regions, you need to also help. And that's why it was really important for me to have the fellowship and support from magazines and organizations to be able to travel.
Yeah, when I look at these pictures, I feel that there's almost two contradicting movements. There's on the one side this idea of scientists, meteorologists living in these harsh regions that is something that is probably really surreal to all of us. So this kind of the natural phenomena of the ice, of the flows, of the light, and all of that you're describing, and these people that are actually working there to observe and measure and do their job. And then on the other side, there is this almost this sphere of fiction, of kind of wonder and storytelling. And in your pictures, you combine these two elements, almost two poles of the same coin, or two sides of the same coin. Is that something that kind of comes from what you find, or is that something that also comes through the kind of photographic medium itself?
Well, I think, well, in many ways, the situations that I find myself in, I want to experience them, even if I don't take pictures. And actually, lately, I've been really enjoying not taking pictures and just experiencing the moment. And it's something new that I actually never had before. When I see something really beautiful, and then I'm thinking, is it better to just enjoy it and have it for myself, or work it and like take a picture of it? So when I plan my travels, and when I plan the chapters in the series, I think, okay, this is the place I really want to go to, and this is interesting. And then of course, a lot of planning goes into what is the best time to go, where the place can open up, when this place can open up to you fully, or in the most unexpected way. Like, it might seem that it's I got lucky with Aurora, but I was waiting for this Aurora to happen for 2 weeks, and I went there when it was likely to happen. So it's, and when it happens, and when you anticipate such interesting moments, because I more or less know, for example, I know that I want to photograph this whiteout, I want to photograph this blizzard. And when you wait for this moment, it's just so crazy, those moments in the Arctic, that they look fictional. And I think when people say that my work look fictional or surreal, etc., it is, in a way, I mean, this is what I photograph. This is the reality, and this is this place. And that's why people who choose to be there, like Evgenia, like Slava, these are the people who really understand something. They want to be in a place that is really, really special. But it's not for everyone, this place, for sure.
So when people describe your work often like dreamlike, or almost taking from kind of movie sequences, and of course there's a lot of context, and also a lot of influence from other media and other references to, for example, films and so on as well. But I guess what they also describe is actually the landscape that you kind of come across. So it's that tension between rationality that you kind of come to see, and the directness and the reality, and also the quality of it being kind of a magical space, and a space and a different time, that maybe a time-space continuum that might kind of make that clearer to people living there.
Yeah, I think there's so many, because it's such a, it's quite the landscape itself is, as you know, it's quite flat. It's tundra. There's no trees, so in a way, it can be quite challenging to work on there, because on you know, for weeks, for months, it can be just white, all the same.
Mm-hmm.
But then something happens, and for example, when I was photographing Dickinson with Aurora, I was thinking about how I really want this magic light, because I want the photographs of the dreams that never came true. You know, so the Dikson was built as this capital of Soviet Arctic. It was this forepost of Arctic exploration. And now you see it's all completely empty, the island part of town. And I just was looking for what is the right way to photograph it, to kind of channel that dreams that never maybe came true, just for a little bit, and then the future of those dreams. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. To kind of almost capture a different time in itself as well. And
yeah. And when I think about this couple in the lighthouse, I was thinking a lot about fragility of human relationships, and especially fragility within the couple, and how the couple creates their own universe and their own world, and how it's quite fragile and needs to balance. And that's why I thought, you know, the blizzard time would be the best time to actually photograph the couple, because I couldn't imagine photographing them in summer somehow.
Mm-hmm.
So I think when I think of the stories, there's so many layers. You can need to think how this particular story will look in this particular time of the year, and then make decisions based on that.
But at the same time, you kind of, while you plan, I guess, very carefully, and I know you're researching a lot in advance to get to those places at exactly the right times, hopefully, and get the right conditions to photograph. You, at the same time, you don't stage your images, really. I don't think staging is the right word. It's more you carefully research and then find angles that kind of realize what you carefully planned. Is that kind of how you would describe it as well?
Yeah, I think it's, I mean, in sometimes, of course, when you're talking about portrait of Evgenia and Ivan, this is a set portrait in the sense that people are knowing they're photographed and they're looking in the camera. But most of the images are, I wouldn't say they're found situations, because in the places where I photograph, the life is quite repetitive, actually. So it's happening, the same thing kind of happens every day, or it's so easy to anticipate what will happen. And on my hard drives, because I use digital cameras, on my hard drives, I have, lots of variations of the same image, and different time of the day, different time of the year. And I guess I'm pretty precise of what image I want, in the sense of even compositions, because I have a chance to be there for such a long extended period of time, sometimes coming back next year, that I kind of know that this is my image, and then I just need to wait for that perfect light, perfect time, perfect. I mean, of course, with walruses or hunt, it's impossible to anticipate, or this is just, I guess, luck, but also not, because for each story I'm working on it for months and months, sometimes years, and then I just come, in the end it's just 8 images or 5 images.
I kind of want to also come back to what you briefly touched base on in your presentation, was this idea around what, especially I guess here also in the West, what we know or what we kind of relate to when we think about the Arctic. It's especially these kind of the heroic explorers kind of fighting or racing each other in these horrible conditions, fighting the elements, and this kind of quite male point of view of storytelling. And I feel that your images, because they show a kind of much more gentler and light side of the Arctic, almost come from the, like, it's not about the extremes. It's not about this fight against nature. It's kind of living with it and being almost enchanted by it in this kind of gentle nature. And it's not gentle, obviously not. There is extremes in there, and people have to make their life there. But it's not a kind of life full of having to battle or something like that. So there's a specific kind of point of view, I think, that hasn't been as much kind of the focus of attention when we talk about the Arctic here. It always feels like there are the two sides. Either it's about these explorers or it's about the climate change and the environmental issues. So was that something you felt quite strongly about it from the beginning, that you wanted to show this different side to the Arctic, or was that also something that kind of developed over time?
Well, I think I cannot pretend I'm someone else, right? I'm just who I am, and this is how I see, or the stories that I'm interested in. But I kind of, in a way, I'm really not into this kind of Indiana Jones type of storytelling and photography. When, you know, I mean, people live in these places, and I'm more interested in the quieter moments and more domestic kind of settings. And perhaps it is a more feminine point of view, but I don't remember now who was that woman, that writer, but a person reached out to me. She's doing this anthropological paper, and she sent me this diaries of explorers, and then in the early 20th century, and I think there was his wife with him, and his diaries are like, oh, it's so harsh, I'm going through the ice, I'm gonna die, and her diaries is like, oh, how boring. Over and over. And I think, you know, I think the biggest challenge, to be honest, in this place is, for me, is the waiting and this kind of time pace that eventually I get used to it, but right after the city, it's kind of hard to get used to it, and it requires some brain tweaking on my side. But yeah, I can't imagine photographing it in different ways somehow.
I mean, you are in a very privileged position, obviously, to visit this place for over such a long period of time. And there are environmental changes, I assume, also within that time that you can witness and you bear witness to. You touched base on that with the walrus image. Were there any other significant moments where you felt that specifically?
Well, I see it, I mean, everywhere, and everywhere you go, really, you can, starting from, you know, vegetation becoming higher and, you know, shrubs taking over tundra, and different new insects arriving, new animals coming, eroding shoreline. I mean, all these things, very clear, and you can really see it everywhere. Like in the Nurmina, where I was just, this summer, you can tell that very soon they'll have to relocate because of the, you know, shore is falling and all these things. I think it's inevitable anymore. And yeah, it's everywhere I go, I just see new signs of change.
When we kind of first installed and looked at the images together, I also thought that they're so timely somehow this year. It's almost weirdly meant to be, because it feels like you can learn from these hermits that live by themselves in these conditions, kind of where routines and everyday life become so locked down, and there's this slower pace of life, and then obviously in a very different conditions, but there's something that feels quite close to how maybe we experience the year as well. Is that something that you experience as well, or you learned from them living through that in some ways?
Yeah, it's interesting how at first I thought, oh, it's not, it's kind of hard to show new work when everything is closed, but actually I think it's perfect time for I just feel, when all this started to happen, of course there was a panic a little bit, but because in the Arctic, when you live, there's such thing as weathering out things, or waiting out the storm, and this is something that people are so used to, waiting out different weather conditions, or bad year of hunting, or different things, unlucky year or something. So I think subconsciously, I suppose I was kind of not, I wouldn't say at ease with it, but I just knew that it's time to weather it out and wait the storm out.
Yeah, it's something we can all kind of learn this year, I guess, in some ways as well. The final question, I just see that the time is running already. Not that much time left, but just from my end, the last question is really about where your practice is going from here. I think you've now created 4 bodies of work in this series about the Arctic stories. There's, of course, your work about Dixie, your hometown as well. Is that something you've, of course, visited many, many more of these outposts, but are you going to continue this practice now? Are you going to come back and kind of fill in different chapters of this big story, this big book?
I think so, because I spent, I would say, almost 50% of my life there, and it's kind of already part of my split personality, and I cannot imagine not being there. It's also my reality check, this place. Very often I'm not able to live in the city for the whole year. It's clear, I need to get out. I need to be there. I need to be with my people, in the sense, my people, I mean, that mentality. Not only Russian, it's not Russian, it's this people of the North. And I think I will continue. I don't know if it will be similar format. I feel that this particular project has a very precise aesthetic that I don't know if I will continue with that, although it's probably, I can't really control it. But I just started to experiment with moving image and with filmmaking, and I'm really excited about that. But
wow, that would be great to see how that develops, and if you will continue in that aesthetic language as well, in moving image. I guess we can move on to the questions in our chat. Wow, there are quite a few things in there.
Do you want me to help?
Yes, Louisa,
if you're kind of taking note of it. You've answered some of them already, Evgenia, but thank you everyone for your questions. Generally, there are some questions, if you don't mind answering, around your personal experience. We have from Kat asking why you left your hometown, and another question from Deborah about do you feel where I'm trying to conflict some of the questions. So why you might have left your hometown, if you don't mind, and why. And do you feel that where you lived as a child gave you a particular understanding of light?
That's a good question. I left my hometown in 1992, because there was a fall of the Soviet Union, and as some people might know, it was a very difficult time in general for the country, but the northern projects of Soviet Union at the time, they almost completely closed. So my town was a military base, which was an important strategic place during Cold War, and a seaport, and then the seaport almost completely stopped functioning. And there was this massive migration from those northern regions, and it's more than 80% of population from those towns kind of fled, and that's what happened to Dikson as well in many ways. In terms of light, I think I think my childhood definitely influenced my sense of light and sense of stories and storytelling. I think many things. I had a very, very happy childhood with my parents, teachers in this remote town that have nothing better to do but to spend time with their kids and teaching them all the fun stuff. But yeah, light is very special in the Arctic. Obviously there is a polar night and polar day, and you kind of learn to read mid-tones of darkness and mid-tones of bright light, and so on.
Another question was also from Xiulu Gao. How long do you normally stay with the subjects of these photos before they felt relaxed and at ease in front of your camera?
Oh, that's different every time. I sometimes don't even open my camera bag for a week or 2 weeks if necessary. I think it's, I want people not only be at ease with me, but kind of understand what I do and or understand my vibe, my energy, and be comfortable with it, and trying not to have my energy taking over or taking too much space in the house or wherever we are. So I'm waiting for that moment of when this balance is back and I'm kind of minimized, and that might take time. Or sometimes I, like for example, the elder Nikolai and Chukotka, this image, I was visiting him so many times, and we were talking, and I knew he's such an interesting person, and I need to take his portrait, but I only managed to take this picture after 2 years. So I think there's the right time for everything, and you just need to be patient again. Yeah.
We've had a lot of questions about lots of really beautiful comments about how stunning your work is and how it's changing over time. So I just wanted to mention some of that feedback from people. There have been a lot of queries about, I know you touched on this earlier, about the process and some of the conditions that you're working in. Would you mind saying a little bit more about how you travel to these places, whether or not you're alone, what is the most challenging part? There was also a question here from Kat about what kind of impact the extreme weather conditions might have on your equipment. Is that a challenge? Can you say a little bit more about your experience in this climate?
Well, the biggest challenge in my work is transportation logistics, for sure. It takes me sometimes just a month to get to a place. And that's something that is absolutely out of my control and out of anybody's control but spirits of weather. And sometimes, in Nurmina village, for example, there's only one flight a month to the village, but then you have to fly through another village and there's only one flight a month, and that doesn't correlate at all. So you just need to wait 2 weeks there, 2 weeks there, and then there is weather delays and all this. And sometimes to get to for example, to Lighthouse, I needed to figure out how to get there because there's no roads, and I could only get there by ship, but I knew I didn't want to photograph in summer. So I found out, the closest village on the map and just flew there, and I found men who have snowmobiles, and we just ask him. Nobody wanted to go because nobody, ever went there. But finally, one person agreed, and we went there, and it took 17 hours to ride, and we got lost and all this. But all of these challenges, I think, make it more precious to me as well. I believe that the harder it is, the better the result will be. I just feel that I don't believe in easy, things that come easy. I don't believe in the image that just appears and you're just lucky to get it. I think, and that actually, when I learned to read the cues during my travel, if things are going really, really hard, I just know that if I will, overcome this, something really good is going to happen. So, and in terms of equipment, it's, I just keep it in my bag, and I don't open it inside to avoid condensation and things like that.
Okay, thanks. That's a really nice comment, by the way, about your working process. And Anita had asked a question about, and I hope you don't mind, it's about more mental health and what is your relationship to the nights? Do you feel depression set in during these polar nights? And I don't know if you feel like maybe you spoke to that with your comment now about how the hardship has its ultimate rewards in the end.
Yeah, I think polar nights is definitely a very difficult time for many people who live in the Arctic, especially people who are not born there. And I also, get blue and melancholic, or in those moments, especially when you don't know what you're waiting for and the wait is so long. And I travel a lot on my own. I would say 50% of the time it's just me. But I try to use these moments to listen to myself and kind of catch a thread that I can potentially use in my work, and try to kind of translate it through the images. It's very hard to do, but I think it's interesting to, I always kind of on the lookout of my own emotions, and it's interesting to see how things are changing depending on weather, depending on conditions. Yeah, but I often travel with my brother, and he's a great help. And now we're actually working on, he's a filmmaker, so we're working on a project together also in the Arctic, which is really exciting.
That's really nice. And I think some of the things that you just shared may be helpful for people in this time. So thank you for that. We are running out of time, so I'll just try to, and I'm sorry we can't get to every question. I'm going to take a cue from what Anna said about some of your future projects, because there have been a lot of questions about how you might continue to revisit some of the recurring themes around the Arctic, how they'll inform what you do. Is there something more that you can say about that, or is there a possibility of more publications? Is there something you can say a bit more concrete, I suppose, because people are really interested?
Yes, I'm planning to turn this project into a book, which I need to just sit down and work on it. But I've been in the Arctic, so I didn't have time to do it. But I do plan to do it. And I look forward to that. So that's hopefully coming up soon. And yeah, I continue working in the Arctic. I mean, it's such an important region and such an important time to talk about it. And the more I work there, the more I understand that, there's more stories that are surfacing during my travels, of course, and during conversations with people. And I just really now want to deepen my work in the region. And yeah, hopefully, I'll have enough energy to do all that.
Thank you for that. Anna, do you have any final comments or anything before we conclude tonight's evening?
I think the final thing that I was really inspired by when we had conversations before, Evgenia, and what we also put in the introduction text of our exhibition was that there's a beautiful quote by one of the Russian poets, I think, that inspired you. Robert was, I'm sorry, I can't. Thank you. And it says, from now on, no matter where you are wandering, on the doorsteps of any spring, you will be raving about the polar roads and keep seeing snowy dreams. And I thought that was a wonderful place to stop our talk. And thank you so much for sharing all of these beautiful stories. And I hope they inspire a lot of our audiences tonight.
Thank you. Thank you all for tuning in.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Anna. Thank you, Evgenia. And thank you, everyone, for your ongoing commitment to the gallery. We really wouldn't be able to do what we do without you. And if you wouldn't mind, could you actually put the quote in the chat box? Because I imagine people will want to revisit that.
Not at all.
If you have a moment, not you, Anna, the participants now, or our guests, if you have a moment, we'd love to hear from you. We're doing a quick poll at the end of this to get some feedback. It'd be great to get some insights into what you've been enjoying, what you haven't been enjoying. And anyway, I do hope you're okay. We have a couple more events before we break for the holidays, so keep checking our website for more information on that and how to visit the gallery. And thank you again, and hopefully see you all soon. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much, Louisa.
Thanks, everyone. Have a nice evening.